everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to look at a way to use a virtual set to display remote guests or to do demos of mobile apps. This will be a virtual set which has an iPhone-like interface and lets you sort of bring this in as a graphical element as opposed to a full virtual production set that would typically be used with the green screen and the like. So before we get to that, I do want to invite everybody, if you have any questions or comments, please just post them below and we'll try to get to them here on the show. Also, if you'd like to join us live on the show, we have a link in the show notes and here on the screen where you can join us and somebody from the studio will get you on air with us. So to get started, I just want to give you basically a demo of what we're going to be covering here on this show. So if you look at the screen, now I have a video that I recorded of just myself sitting, which we're going to be using here. So if we take this video out here and put it up, let me see, there we go. So this is me on the screen. And then if we had a guest come on, we can turn around and have that guest slide out, be part of a sort of a virtual set that is a phone, a mobile phone device. We have their metadata showing up there at the top, so we know who they are and where they're calling from. And then when we're done with that, we can just slide them off air. And in addition, let me just sort of slide them back on air. I can actually go and do things where I can just show the screen of the phone, and we'll go through that as well and how we have all that set up. So on the show, what we're going to do is we're going to break all this down. We're going to go through the virtual set and how that set is built. We'll look at the preset and how we set it up so that everything can slide over and the host still stays sort of centered on the remaining space on the screen when the phone's there. And then, when we just merge that out and it goes away, that all slides out and the host recenters. And we're going to cover a little script that will take metadata from the remote guest coming in to know when they're ready to go on air and automatically slide the guest in on the side. So we got a number of things that we want to get to here. But before we dig into how we have all this set up, we have some comments coming in. So let's get to that. Spatial, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Michael, yeah, hopefully this is something that people find interesting. There's a lot of little bits in here that we're putting together. So hopefully this works for most of you out there for something you could use. So good to see you here. Thank you. I'm glad you find the topic relevant. That's always good to hear. So let's see. Tom Eagle saying, in the YouTube chapter marks video, I need to remove carriage return and line. I'm guessing that's line feed from the text. It says the char function and the VBCRLF are not available. Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I mean, I think there are probably some ways that we could do that in scripting. I would just have to look that up as well. But I'm not sure I'll be able to have it researched for you for the post show, but I'll definitely get back and just message me directly through Facebook, and I should be able to get you something on the best way to do that. William, thank you. I appreciate you joining us here today. Thanks. Okay, so now that you saw what we're going to do, I'm going to sort of break this down in multiple levels. So first, let me sort of jump over here to, give me a second as I slide this over. What I want to get to is I have all of the set elements here. So if we slide over here for a moment, so here is if we look over here on my right screen, here is a folder. And this folder, the way you create virtual sets inside of vMix is you put all the elements you want inside a folder. So let me just sort of click in this folder. This is called iPhone perspective because it's sort of a perspective view. And what you then have is a single folder with these individual elements that you have in place and a config file, an XML config file that you set up that describes how all of these elements go together. And so if I drag that over here, so here is the XML file. So let me open this up and let's see, so here is everything that's in there to describe this virtual set. And so the way it's set up here is these list all the different layers as inputs to this virtual set. And you can name each layer. And when you set this layer up, you can say, do I want it to have a specific X and Y position? Do I want it to have a specific zoom level or rotate, crop? So all the things you'd want to do on that. And then right at the very end, you have these lines here, dynamic equals, and then the name of the default file that it will use to set that up. So this dynamic, what that means is that when you're inside your vMix preset, you can actually swap this out with something else. So there'll be a little drop down which says for the input named, in this case, background, I can go in and change it to something different and display that instead of the background I have here. That's really great if you set up virtual sets that you want to use with different clients and you may have colors or branding or other things that you'd want to use in a background element. You can actually just do that here and say once I have a generic one that I use, but when I'm in my production, I can pick a specific one for this particular client. So that can make your virtual sets work really well. And then all I have after that are all the layers sort of in a stack. So the top one is the one that's furthest back. So this is, sort of like Photoshop inverted, where, the bottom one, the one that's down here is the top layer. So this is the one that sits on top of all the others. And so you create this stack of elements that come in here. So we have this background. Then we have the iPhone screen. And the iPhone screen is the actual place where either the guest image or the screen that we have from the mobile device, that is the element that gets placed there. And the way that happens is it's using something, another thing, we had dynamic equals true, so I could replace it if I wanted to, but it also has something called a UV map assignment. And what I can do with a UV map assignment is I can tell the system, here is effectively a pixel map for how I want you to take the image that I'm assigning to this layer and map it into the set. And let me see if I can just go back to this for a second. Here is what we set up. This is an example of a UV map. Oh, let me move this over here. So the way a UV map is structured, and this is something we've talked about in other shows, is each pixel in this has a red, blue, and green color assignment. The red and the green are used to do the mapping. And the blue is just, available. So if you want to put text or markers or other grid layouts or anything, you could put that there for when you're using this. But each pixel now, each color that you see here, because it has a red value and a green value, it actually becomes a coordinate system. And this is the reason when you create UV maps, you need to do them with at least a 16-bit depth for each color. And the reason for that is if you did the standard sort of 8-bit, 8-bit gives you 256. So what you're basically getting then is a grid of 256 pixels across by 256 pixels high. So if you've ever built this sort of UV map or used it, and in something like Photoshop, you compressed the bit space to just 8 bits, you got this very pixelated sort of virtual set look when you map something to that. This is the map that we're using now with 16-bit by 16 bits, so 65,000 each direction that you can map. And that gives you that very high resolution mapping from whatever your source is. And that's how this is all set up. So this is really just a, let me see if we can get this off of here. So that's really just all we're doing. It's an image with that specific property. And because it's that sort of map, when I go to lay something on it, it's taking the image that I assigned to, whether it's video, whether it's a still image, and it's turning around and saying, where in the grid is this pixel? Because it knows the color. So when I have that cut out and I have it at a perspective and everything else, it knows exactly how to map which pixel in the video or image onto which pixel in the UV map. And that's how that works. And it may be a little confusing, but I think when you sort of sit back and think, basically it's just a grid that you can cut out and map anything to, no matter how you manipulate it. It becomes a little more understandable that way. And it's just using colors to do that. So let's see here. Somebody's saying my audio may be a little low here. So let me know if the audio is a problem, and we can, try to up it on this side. But so this is how we have that layer. So we have our background, we have a UV map, and then we have this iPhone-like front that we put over, which is all the, the border, the casing size, all that stuff. And the UV map shows through that. And that's the structure of our virtual set that we have here. And all of these elements, they're going to be all up on our Google Drive for the show. I haven't put them up there yet, but we'll get them all up there after the show. And you'll be able to download this and work with it and do your, own manipulations to get this to be exactly what you want. So the last part of a virtual set is this down here. You get to set up different zoom levels in a virtual set. And this is basically just saying how far in or out do I want to zoom on the set. You can set these up to be anywhere. So I said, this is sort of just standard 1, 1, 2, 4. So it's just deeper into each one of the layers there. So that's all we have, but it's just what's great when you deal with virtual sets inside of vMix is that they are just files. It's XML files and it's image assets and the UV map assets that you combine and you put them all in a directory. So it's very easy to create your own, to manipulate ones that other people have shared with you. So I think that's really, the key to understanding virtual sets. It's just this sort of layered set of assets with an XML descriptor like this that goes with it. Okay, so that's basically how everything works with the UV map. So let me get this stuff out of here, and with the virtual set configuration file. So the other thing now is I want to go into the vMix preset, but I think we have some more comments here. So let me, let me just see. So Bill is saying, could you do all this within vMix's own commands without scripting? So the quick answer is everything that we're doing on today's show, Bill. So thank you for that. Anything that we're doing on today's show, outside of one thing we're doing to automatically trigger the slide in when a guest goes on air through our Call-in-One product, everything else is just done with native vMix. So you don't need to do any scripting for that. So this should be something that you can sort of easily integrate into your own productions to do these types of things. So everything's pretty straightforward. So let's see. We have Biz Shorty. Biz, good to see you here. Thanks for joining. So you missed whatever came before you posted the comment. I'm not quite sure what you missed, but it's really just an intro for what we're doing here. So hopefully you'll be able to catch up. So let's see. Okay. So I think we're working on the audio. So if somebody just sends a message, if the audio is any better, that would let us know. Otherwise, we'll keep looking at it. Okay, so now let's jump over to our vMix preset and we'll sort of go through all the different elements that we have in place here. So this is a pretty simple preset. We just have a set of core elements. So this is just a looped video I have of myself from something else I did. So that is going to be sort of our host in this example. This is a caller that's coming in from our remote system. So if I disconnect here and you can see, so this is just the color bars that we have from our call-in-one system. What we have here is the video that's coming in from our iPhone screen. And the way we are doing that is we are using an NDI app that basically it's a broadcast app. So it will take whatever is on your mobile device. I believe it's available for both iOS and Android, but it works across iPhones as well as iPads and tablets. So it works sort of in both footprints, but it takes whatever is on the screen and converts it into an NDI stream. And we'll go into that when we have this set up, when we go into that piece of it and sort of look at how we do the screen work. The next slide over is we have a mix. And this lets us switch between what you see here, which is the screen that's coming in from the iPhone. And I can just sort of flip that over and flip it to the guest. So I just have that there as a convenience for me. But this is something you could do where if you were ping-ponging between multiple guests, for instance, you could turn around and say, when I'm ready for my next guest, I can flip the old one out and put the new one in, things of that sort. So different ways to use the mix, but it's we just had that set up. And then we are actually into the sort of the elements that we're using for our set. So we have a background image that's a mobile, that's a moving background. You can see sort of just a little flickering in here from all the pixels. And then we have the virtual set itself. And so we described how that is set up. But I mentioned that when you say that you could have an element be dynamic, where it says dynamic equals true or false, here is where I could come in and say, these are the different elements I had set up: the screen, the frame, and the background here. So what this lets me do is I could go in and change any of those. So say I wanted to say what's on my screen. Right now, I am taking the output of the phone or the mix or any of these other things, the background. I could put any element that I wanted on there. And that's basically how we set this up. So right now you can say it's coming from here, the iPhone source mix too. That's what you have in there now. But I could pick any of these elements directly and use that. So that's what's sitting here. And you can change anything. I could change the front frame. I could change the background, any of those things that I wanted to. And I can manipulate all of those as needed. And then this is sort of to Bill's point, because Bill was asking about whether we needed scripting for anything. So the way we do the animation for this to slide in and out, so let me sort of stop this here. So if I want to do this as an animated thing, what I'm using is a merge function. So I have everything set up with myself, sort of the host, as the main shot, and all of the other elements. So if you look at this, all of the other elements we have, so we have multiple layers. We have the phone set, the phone background, as well as the host. The phone background and the phone background and the phone set, these are all slid off of the side of the screen. And what we do then is when we do the merge, we can have these slide in. So now if I come here and look at the phone set, you can see now that I've slid this in partially over the way here to get this to line up the way I want and have this appear. And we do the same for the background, which is that element over here, and the set. So when we do the merge in, it's just moving between these, and all it's doing is doing a merge between these two inputs. And so that means we don't have to have anything set up special for this. You are just sort of using two standard inputs and the merge function to create the slide between them. And then the last elements here are we have the overlay. So if you remember, so let me start this up. When I connect a guest, so just connect somebody in here. And when I set them on air, you'll see that I have a name and a location appear for that guest. And we have that set up so that we're pulling metadata out. And this, again, is just using standard vMix functions. There's, again, still no scripting here. And we are reading that metadata in our data sources manager. So this is the caller info that's coming from our call-in-one product, which we'll get into in a minute. And this is just pulling in the metadata for that guest. So this is, again, very straightforward, but it gives us the ability now to create something that if I take and now bring this guest off air and then drop them and bring the other guest on, you'll see now that when they slide in, they have their specific metadata that's related to them. So it's something that makes all this easier. Standard, again, all standard vMix functionality here. So let me see. What else? The other thing which we'll get to, and I just have here, is there is a, let me see if we can just switch over to the output here. But this is, okay, yep, let me switch this in. So this is the screen capture we use for the mobile device, so for iOS. So it's called NDI-HX Capture Screen Sharing, which will let you, basically go and pull your iPhone or iPad or Android device screen and send it out as an NDI feed. And so I just wanted to give you a visual reference for where you can get that element if you want to use something like this yourself. So that was all we had for that. But I do want to show some of these things in a demo. Before I do this, I know we have a few more comments in here. So let's see. So American Newscape is giving us an aloha. Thank you for joining us, American Newscape. Appreciate you being here. So Biz Shorty says he likes the no scripting required. So yeah, we're going to have a little bit of scripting at the end, but it will be pretty straightforward. But yeah, almost everything we've shown up to this point, you can do without scripting. Four-Legged Flicks is catching up. Four-Legged, great to have you here. Thank you. So Michael's just saying that this is something that is a pretty straightforward usage for him. And so absolutely, these are some really cool things that you can do. And I think that's the great thing. Even though you can do a lot of complex things with vMix, a lot of them at their heart are very, very simple functionally. So it doesn't require a lot of setup, and it's something that's sort of baked in. So it gives you a lot of power from a lot of simple elements. Almost like Legos. That's sort of, I can build really cool stuff with just a fixed set of simple blocks to work with. Okay, Guy. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. And Walter from Amsterdam, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is let me sort of show you a little bit of what we can do with the demo screen. So I'm going to, let's switch this over to our, let's see. Yeah, so okay, so now we're going to show you how you could demo an app on your iPhone or iPad if you wanted to integrate that. Or, this is basically just capture anything that's on the screen that you wanted to. So if you look here, so let me sort of cut this in and we'll switch to this. So what you can see here is this is the interface you get, and it gives you a stop and start broadcast. So if I click, there's a little button. You can't really see me do this first piece, but it gives me a quick little countdown as I'm counting through this. And then now you can see that I am sort of live now here. And if I go up here and start to move through, you can see that I could show anything off on the screen here. So let's go here. There's a Blackmagic camera. So this is something where I could go and just show any of the settings. And this is all just very straightforward stuff, show the camera in action, go through the interface. So this gives you a fairly straightforward way to take anything that's on this screen. But this could also be a FaceTime caller, something like that, potentially. I haven't tried it with FaceTime, but I would assume that this would give you some capabilities to do that, at least with certain apps, even if not FaceTime directly. Or, you could be anything where you're playing videos or scrolling through photos that you may have that you want to share. So all of this, can work really well when you're dealing with this. And this is just a very, very powerful thing, because now I can show off anything on my screen that I want to, and even go in and sort of go through any types of notifications or any types of, comments that people may be posting as you're broadcasting. So very, very useful for a variety of things. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on here was we are using our Call-in-One product. I don't usually do a whole lot of product plugs when we're doing this show, but this is something I think could be useful and interesting to a lot of people. What our Call-in-One product will let you do is basically you can post a URL like we do for this show, and then in this single interface, I can see all the guests that could call in. I could select any of the guests that I have, just select the one I want, connect to them, and then when this guest is up, I can then send them on air as an NDI feed, which is exactly what you would get if you were looking inside of our vMix preset. So let me see if I can shoot this and the vMix preset on screen at the same time with me, so we can sort of split this up and I could show you exactly how this would work. Okay, so now you can see if we are on the vMix screen, you can see here's the guests that we would have coming in, and this is the mix where they're feeding the virtual set. So if I came in here and said I want to set this guest on air, what you can see now is their video has come in here as the caller. We have that coming into our virtual set through the mix. And then in the virtual set, because we use that UV map, it's just cropping the center of this and angling it. So you're getting the right sort of perspective on this video. So when it's coming in, it's showing you sort of that angled view of the video. And when I'm done, all I have to do now, because we'll get into this in a moment, but we have a little script running in the background. When I turn around and say, I want to set this person off air, what will happen now is it freezes the video, and the guest now, that slide off air triggers automatically. So the person that's operating the vMix session doesn't even have to do anything. When a guest is ready, say I want to take and pick up my next guest and bring them on, I connect them, everything looks good. I can then send them on air, and you'll now see the next guest slides in. So makes it very streamlined, which is why I wanted to show off the scripting. But you can also see this interface is fairly straightforward. It just has guests coming in. This is the video that they'll get back. And if they're on air or off air, you can show different videos, but we have the same one going back. This is all the statistics on the guest connection coming in here. And then we have all the metadata. This metadata is populated normally by the guests when they sign in. They can put their name, location, other things if they want. Or you can fill it in yourself and just type in specifics if you wanted to. And that can all be picked up inside of Live to Air. And because we write this out as XML, that's why we could use Data Source Manager. I'm sorry, inside of vMix. That's why we could use Data Source Manager inside of vMix to pull that data out and to leverage it. So this really isn't about Call-in-One specifically, but I just wanted to show you so you could get a sense of how this all works. And let me just dig in a little bit to the scripting and how we set that up. So let's slide into the script here. And we're going to start first. Let's zoom in here. We're going to start first by looking at the metadata that we have here. So in this is what's being written out. And this is what we're using against our scripting. We just come back and say there's only one channel and colon one. But we're saying, is the guest connected to the system? That is online is true. Are they on air or off air? And that is what we're using inside of our script. This will, if the guest state is on air, that means we're sending out a live video. If it's off air, that means we're sending out a freeze frame or color bars. And then we have their metadata, their name and their location. We have other things you could put in here if you want it, including things like notes that you could use. And that's all the XML data that we have. And so we have a very simple script. And I know it looks longer than it is because there's a lot of repeated things in here. So the way we're doing this is when we start up, we have two things we're tracking. What's the previous state, sort of the old state of the caller? Were they on air and then they went to off air? Were they off air, then went to on air? So we start out by saying we have their current state and the state they were in previously. And then we just do the standard, we load the vMix XML. And we are, before we start looping to sort of keep track of things, we are just pulling out a single value called old caller state. So what we want to know is when we come into the application, when we are sort of launching, what state is this caller in? Are they on air, off air? Is there nothing there? And so we are just pulling that out of a text field inside a GT title. So the title we're using for the overlay, that actually has another field in there called status of the guest. It's called status, and we pull that out directly. And that's just something that we've done in the past where we describe the XML path and select a single node. And that was just pulling that out as the status text. And that's telling us what their old state was. And we print that out here so we would know if we had that initial state. And then one of the things we're doing to make things a little simpler, if the old caller state is none, which means there isn't anybody connected, we just set it to off air because for our purposes, we're really just interested when somebody goes from off air to on air or from on air to off air. And that's all we have now is a simple loop that is just keeps running in the background where we pull the latest caller state out inside this loop. And then we turn around and say, if the current caller state is on air and the old caller state was off air, so that's telling me they are transitioning from being off air to being on air, then the first thing we do is we come in here and execute this code. We go in and say, we'll set the old caller state to on air now because they are on air, and that's the state that they've been in now in the past. And I just do the merge to host plus caller, which does that whole slide in on the side. And we just post a notice to say we switched to on air. Conversely, we also do a check to say if the caller switched to off air, we're saying if the current caller state is off air and the previous one was on air, then we just sort of do the reverse. We take the overlay off, that little thing which has the name and location. We take that off, and then we do the merge to host only. And so again, a very simple kind of script. And the reason we're doing this is we didn't just want to check just the state. So when you think about this, if I just look to say if the caller state were on air, do this, and if the caller state were off air, do that. What would happen is once I was on air, I would keep refreshing the UI because I stay in that on air state. So what I'm really trying to do by having this Boolean of the current state and the previous state is I'm creating actions only on transitions between states and not when I'm in a state itself. So normally when I'm on air and I've been on air, none of this gets executed. So just the ifs fail, it sleeps for 300 milliseconds, loops back and does it again. So like I said, it's a very simple script. We're reading one element and doing a little bit of if-then logic around that element. But that's really all we're doing here. So hopefully that makes sense, but you can see the real power in this because now just using the state of something external to vMix, but coming in through as a data source, I can now trigger different types of actions. So you could do this with lots of other production tools that you have, anything with graphics, anything that is working with data. You can do these types of things now for scripting. So say you had a Google Sheet and you wanted to know when scores changed, you wanted to flash something up if there was a score change. You could use exactly this type of script for that, where you always, when you get a new score, you always compare it to the old score, and then do that sort of flip, and then you're doing the same sort of testing. If the old score and the current score are the same, don't do anything. If they're different, then I take some action. So lots of cool things you could do with this that are going to be metadata driven. And I think that's going to be something that could be really interesting. I'd love to see, if you guys do anything with it, please share it. I'd love to see what you do. But hopefully this now sort of makes a little more sense. This isn't necessary. This is sort of something I threw in at the end because I didn't want to make the focus of this episode scripting, but just have it here if you're interested. All right. So let me see if we have any more comments in here, and we can sort of wrap up and go to our post show. Okay. So yes, Lego is, and I mean, so not to deviate too far, but the whole story of Lego and how they're built, like those little bricks and the tolerances and everything, it's absolutely amazing. So if you ever get a chance, everybody go onto YouTube and just sort of look up stories about Lego and everything that people, sort of from the original product and how they're compatible up to today. And I don't know how many decades of Lego that are all to a certain tolerance that could all interact. So really cool. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. So yeah, so Biz, thank you for that. I mean, so we set Call-in-One up because we wanted to do something that could sort of fit in different price points in the market. So Call-in-One it's a subscription, $99 a year. So we wanted to do something that didn't have a big upfront, that could fit in for less than sort of $10 a month, like just over $8 a month in the US, that could let you do this type of call-in capability into a production. And we think that's one of the things, like all of the tools that are out there, and things like what vMix has built in with Call and with Zoom, they're really great for bringing in remote guests. But to have callers come in where you could just have people stacked up and pull that metadata and do all that stuff dynamically, we felt there was sort of a space in the market for something different. And that's, really what Call-in-One is targeting for, specifically for call-in products, as a call-in product for those types of productions. So glad you found it useful. Thank you for commenting on that. I appreciate it. So LiveToday this is Michael saying, so LiveToday needs to be on the same networks as vMix is running on. It needs to be able to reach it because it's basically an NDI source. So you could have Live-to-Air running with NDI bridge, and you could have pulling that NDI across the internet and feed NDI bridge into vMix or any other place you wanted to send it. So yeah, but you need to have that sort of integrated connection there. That's one thing. The other is if you're using NDI, if you're not using NDI, if you're using SDI, Live-to-Air, and Call-in-One is only NDI, but Live-to-Air is NDI and SDI. So you could also do an SDI out. Which means you don't have to be on the same network. You just have to have an SDI connection to your vMix system, and that will let the two talk that way. And again, that would be like embedded audio, but all these things, if you want to use Dante, then again, you need a similar Dante network connection across both. So anything that's IP based, you'll need some network reach, whether it's sort of bridged or whether it's direct. Anything that's, embedded SDI or HDMI even, you're fine running on two separate network environments. Jesper, hello. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you here. Oh, and so FaceTime with NDI will work, but you cannot send video or audio back. Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be, one of the issues, Walter, is that it really isn't designed for that. But again, you can sort of say, if you have the phone like I just have here, I could set this and point this at something and just, have it so that there's a rough connection if you needed to bring somebody on, that would give you that ability if that were the only way to get them. But yeah, it isn't as good. But I would have to look. I'm not sure whether you can send in audio directly through an interface. I know there are some things you can do and some things you can't. I know you can't just put a webcam or other sort of video device that way, but you may be able to do it with audio. I'm not sure, but thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, you would need for the video to point your device at something that you wanted to pull that from. Thank you. Yeah, so this is something, yeah, I think, when it comes to marketing, I don't know, I obviously don't do a very good job of that. But yeah, so yeah, I think, we're trying to target, a very broad market with this. And I think, there may be a good fit somewhere. So, clearly, if anyone's interested, just go on to our, neuralnet.com website. And we have Call-in-One in there as a product. We can get you a free demo for 30 days and the like. So, yep, always welcome, if business comes in. So I appreciate that. So Michael's asking, can you use the Call-in-One as a green room where the operator can talk and message the guest? Actually, yes. So Michael, why don't I do this? If you have just a minute, why don't we wrap up this show and then I'll go into the post show and we can, I can show you a little bit more of how that would work, and we can go in and answer any other questions. So just hang on 1 minute and we'll be back to that. So as I said, we'll wrap this up now and then we'll get into the post show more. Thank you everybody for being patient and coming back to the show, even though we're not doing it on as regular a basis as we have in the past. We want to get back to that, and we are determined to at some point, but we're sort of working a little bit ad hoc right now. But if you can't join us for the post show, thank you very much, and we will see you in a few weeks, 2 or 3, with our next show. If you can, I'll see you in a few seconds. Take care. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for the post show here. I want to get to Michael's question. We was talking about, can you set this up as a green room? So let me switch over so you can sort of see this. The interface for Call-in-One basically has everything for, these are all the guests that are coming in. You can only have one guest at a time connected. So this can't work as a true communal green room where you could have all of your callers sort of coming in and being together. But when this guest is, if I set this guest to off air, let me sort of go and just show you the settings. I can say, what do I want the guest to see and hear when they're in off air mode? So we have that here. So you can turn around and say, this is the video source. You can sort of set up, this is the audio source that I have coming in. So this gives you now the ability to have an operator here in the studio sort of talk to the guest before they go live. And then when you switch them on air, they can be fed live. And you can say, when I switch this guest on air, what video and audio source do I want them to hear? So this gives you that sort of mix now to say, okay, here's what they will hear. And this will tell you where is their audio coming out of. So you'll be able to sort of say, this is where I'm feeding their audio. So in this case, we're using Dante to feed this audio out. So I can set all this up here, and then I sort of have a one-on-one green room with each of the guests when they connect. I can change all their media devices. So I can say, what are all the different cameras you have? What resolutions do you support? And what audio sources do you support? So you can do all that and swap all that remotely. You have all the guest metadata that's sitting here. So you can fill this in if they didn't fill in something, or if you wanted to add other types of notes or other things. And you also have all the technical details. So what's their frame rate and resolution? What's the IP address they're at? What codecs are they using? What's the latency for things that are coming in and going out? So all that's there. And we also give you the ability, when you see the guest, to sort of sit there and go, I can now see their framing. So we have sort of center third, center half, 4/3, and 16/9. So as you look at this now, if you need the guest to sort of slide over to get correctly framed, you can do that and make sure that they look good for this. So that's sort of what we have there. You have different audio levels and things like that, but everything really goes around the set to on air, set to off air. You also have a push to talk. So when the guest is on air, you could talk in their ear so it wouldn't go out, but you could say, okay, wrap it up. We're dropping you in 5 seconds or whatever. So you have that sort of stuff. And you could also use this with live to air and do all the things you would do normally in our call-in manager application and work with live to air. So this could be for sort of random guests that are calling in, and live to air could be used for your, pre-planned guest and host that may be coming in remotely. So it's sort of a general tool, but it's really targeted at call-in shows where you have a one-on-one green room and send guests in to production with metadata. So hopefully that makes this make a little more sense for how this fits in. Okay, if you have any other questions on that, please just get back. Happy to go in. So Michael's saying it's not bad that the show is every 2 weeks. You get time to learn the stuff. Yeah, I mean it's really just a question of how much I can do in any given period of time anymore. So that's what we're working on. But hopefully I'll be able to pick up a little more speed as time goes on, because I am looking forward to getting into a new season, and we'll sort of go into what we want to do for that later. But definitely interested in moving forward and doing a lot more stuff. So, all right. So one of the other things that, and Michael had asked before, so I'll sort of see if I can pop this on here, is we're talking about, let me see if I can find this here, Stream Deck. And he was asking about how to use the dials on a Stream Deck Plus. So let me sort of just stick this up here. Don't know how well this will zoom. But the way we have this set up here is we have a Stream Deck Plus here, and I have apps that are basically designed specifically. If you sort of come here, there are specific dial-based apps. I'm not sure. I haven't done this in a while, so there are specific ones. I just don't know exactly where they're all set. But there are specific ones that are for working with dials, and you can go and you can just drag these onto the dials that you have here, and then if you click on this, you can turn around and say, what's the name of it? What's it for? So this is, right now we have 2 Elgato lights that we have set up here. So this lets me control the levels of the lights. So if you sort of sit here, I'll just sort of turn this way down. You can see just by adjusting the dial, I can make adjustments to the lighting that we have set up here. The other that we have here is for my audio from my headphones. And this is just so when I want to listen to something, especially if we had a guest come on, I can just adjust the volume here on a little dial on my Stream Deck Plus, and that gives me that control. But all this stuff, so this let me sort of go over here. So this is basically taking the system audio and letting me make any adjustments to that. And so that's all just sitting up here beside me. So it gives me a very easy way to make these types of sort of environmental adjustments using the knobs. But we also did something on a previous show, I don't remember which episode, where we used the knobs to set a number. I think it was for going through, I'm trying to remember what it was for. Maybe for like player numbers, if you wanted to find a player with a specific number, maybe something like that, where you could just turn the knob and we did a little script that would let you create a number out of the dial turn. That could be, oh no, I know exactly what we use that to do crops and positionings of elements inside of a multi-box. So if you put a box up and you wanted to say, I want to adjust where this guest, the remote guest sort of sat inside the thing. So if they were sort of sitting a little off to the side, and when you put them in a multi-box, you wanted to frame them up correctly, we gave you the ability to do that with dials, to sort of slide them around, height, zoom, and where horizontally they were. So if you look that up, that we actually do a much more detailed dive into grabbing that information from a Stream Deck Plus. So multiple things you could do with it, but I know that we did mention that, Michael, when we were talking before. So definitely wanted to show you that as well. So he says, how do you grab the dial from inside vMix? I can't get that part of it to work. Oh gosh. I'm trying to remember how we did it. We actually, okay, there was a way to do this. We actually could tie it. We took the dial and tied it to one of the elements on an input. So vMix does support, and I can't remember the specifics that we did it, but vMix has support to use dials to do certain things. And what we did is we took that dial, mapped it to that thing in a box that didn't mean anything, an input that didn't mean anything. And then we used scripting to read the vMix XML to pull that value that we were changing with the knob and apply that to other things inside of vMix. So I'm sorry, I just can't remember the specifics, but inside of vMix, there is the ability to work with the knobs for different elements when you want to set that up as controls. So just don't remember specifically what it was. But yes, let me see if I can do that on the next show, just to make sure that we cover that for you. All right. So thank you for being patient with me. Sorry I didn't have a more concrete answer on that piece of it, but that's definitely something that you can do in multiple ways, both in scripting, sort of indirectly by reading the XML, and directly in vMix. So I'll cover that next time. Thank you, Michael. All right. If we don't have any other questions, thank you very much, all of you, for joining me. I really do appreciate it. A lot of fun doing the show with you. And we will, let me see, do we have? So, we have another. Michael says, is the video stream from Call-in-One as good, bad as vMix Caller? So, hard to give you a direct comparison. We do our own processing, so we have certain things that we do. We do fix the resolution at a specific, if you want, so it takes a little more CPU overhead, but we can fix the caller's video at a specific resolution, so that if their signal changes, we do the up res or down res based on what you have. So if you're doing things like recording, it doesn't break recordings. You can keep that recording at a set resolution, and that way set resolution and frame rate actually, because we do that, and that will give you that. We both use the same basic underlying technologies sort of for the transport with WebRTC. But again, every one of these, has their own, differences. So the signal quality is going to be, the original signal quality is going to be as good as you can get, typically driven by what the remote guest and the internet connection you have with them will support. But the only difference is we actually will lock the frame rate and make that something that you can record consistently without breaks. All right. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you joining us here. And until we see you in a couple of weeks, be safe, be well. Take care, everyone.